There will be occasions, and I've come across them, where having a fixed dimensional array is not very flexible. It would be quite useful if your array could be dynamic in its number of indexes. So instead of defining a variable with 10 indexes, we might want it at some point to have 3, another point to have 12, another point to have 500. So we can actually do that. We can create a dynamic array. And the process is it still needs to be declared. So we dim or public our array, depending on where we're using it in its scope. I'm going to call it dynamic. And we put nothing in the open and close brackets. Let's declare it as a string this time for a change. So the VBA is happy. However, before you can actually use it and assign values to it, you need to tell it how many indexes it needs before you can start using them. At the moment, it's created this dynamic variable, but it actually has no indexes within it, but it knows it's an array and will have some indexes in it because of the open and close brackets. So at some point before we actually use any of the array values, we need to run a little statement called redim your array, so dynamic, and then actually tell it at this point how many array indexes to create. And that could either be a fixed value that we now put in, 12, 13, 42, or it could be fed by another variable, which I'll call number indexes. So it's redim, name of your array, and then how many indexes to now have. Once you've created them, you can then start to use them. So depending on how many you've just created, that's how many you can use. Now you can redim at any stage. So if you suddenly find that you have not got enough elements, then you can redim again. So I could carry out my code here, maybe loops a few times, and then I've actually got not enough index spaces to hold my values, then I can just run the redim statement again. So I can take the same statement and redim it with whatever the current value is of number of indexes. The thing to bear in mind, however, is that every time you redim an array, it actually empties out the current values. What it does is it deletes what's there and recreates the index spaces, but they don't have any values in. It's not such a headache because you can actually tell it not to throw away the current values by simply using the same statement, but throwing in a little keyword called preserve. So if we run redim preserve our array and the number of elements we would like, it keeps the current values. Now, if the redim actually reduces the number of indexes, you will lose some data. There's no two ways about that. But it will retain them up to the number of indexes you've just asked for. If you're actually increasing the number of indexes, then the current values are retained and the new ones that are created are empty, therefore ready to use. So this is a dynamic array, one that you can actually change the values of. And you do it by initially declaring it with no indexes and then use the redim statement to tell it how many indexes you would like at this moment in time so that you can then use them. And you can redim at any time you like. Throughout your code, you might want to redim quite frequently. Bear in mind that the redim statement effectively throws away the index and recreates the new number. Adding in the preserve keyword while you're running the redim keeps any current indexes you've got and effectively adds on some more, or if it's a lower number, reduces them from the end. So the earlier indexes will still retain their values.